All hope was lost for the Bynars, the Kryn slaughtering them without mercy, until the humans, led by Louis Lewis, came to Xyloth to try to save them from extinction. Louis wiped streams of sweat off his dirt-streaked face, plasma rifle clutched in his hands. Booms and cracks of weapons fire and explosions reverberated through the shattered remains of the bunker as the battle raged outside. Lewis was attached to the 501st Human Expeditionary Force on Xyloth, humanity the only ones who answered the distress call and came to help the Bynars in their desperate losing struggle against the relentless, ruthless Kryn Empire. The Kryn had already conquered and subjugated dozens of worlds, enslaving entire species or exterminating them completely. And now Xyloth, the Bynars' homeworld and last bastion, was on the brink of falling too. If it did, if the humans failed here, the entire Bynar race would be wiped out forever. Extinct. For months now, Lewis and his platoon had been slugging it out on the front lines, watching with grim frustration as the Kryn's vastly superior numbers and advanced tech pushed the Bynar lines back, overwhelming their defenses bit by bit. When the Bynars called out across the stars for aid, pleading for help from the Galactic Alliance, the other member races turned their backs, all except humanity. Humans couldn't bear to see another people destroyed while they stood by. So they volunteered, to stand and fight alongside the Bynars, to the bitter end if it came to that. And it looked like it would. Lewis's helmet comlink crackled, and his commander's voice cut through the sounds of war. All units, heads up. Long-range scanners picking up multiple Kryn capital ships entering the system. Trajectory puts their landing zones across the northern continent. Expect planetfall within 2 hours. The other human soldiers hunkered in the bunker, with Lewis cursed softly. Capital ships meant even more Kryn troops and heavy armor. The bunker shook as another shell struck nearby, showering them with pulverized concrete. Lewis gripped his rifle tighter. "Dig in deep and hold the line," the commander continued. "Reinforcements are on the way, inbound from the core worlds. If we can just hold out a little longer." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Louis and the others knew no ships could get here in time. The vague promise of reinforcements was a noble lie, meant to keep up hope and fighting spirit in this darkest hour. Louis found himself checking his weapons charge for the 100th time, counting each power cell, knowing deep in his gut that there wouldn't be enough. Suddenly, his HUD pinged with a proximity alert, something coming in fast towards his position from the south. Louis shouldered his rifle and peered over the parapet, expecting one of the Kryn's scout drones. But then a familiar figure staggered through the rubble and into the shattered bunker. It was Mira, the Bynar liaison, embedded with his squad. She lurched and fell to one knee, violet blood oozing from a savage shrapnel wound in her shoulder. "Mira!" Lewis called, springing up and rushing to her. He pulled a med patch from his belt, hands moving on autopilot to tear the wrap and slap the adhesive pad over the worst of the bleeding. Mira didn't resist, seemingly too dazed and in shock. "What happened?" Louis asked, trying to meet her unfocused gaze. "Where's the rest of your unit?" Slowly, Mira raised her eyes to his. The despair and horror Louis saw there made his blood run cold. When she spoke, her voice was a thready rasp. "Gone. They're all gone," she whispered. "The Kryn hit us with some new weapon. A swarm of necrotic nanites that—" She swallowed, shaking her head as if to banish the memory. "It ate them, Louis. Devoured them from the inside out. I can still hear them screaming." "Shh, save your strength," Louis urged gently, smoothing the med patch. "We'll get through this somehow, Mira. We humans have a saying back on Earth. It's always darkest before the dawn." Mira's mouth twisted in a ghost of a smile at the bizarre human idiom. Then her eyes suddenly flew wide in terror, locking on something over Louis's shoulder. He whirled, snatching up his rifle. Skittering out of the shadows, a nightmarish insectoid creature out of mankind's worst alien horror vids came straight for them, all gnashing mandibles and writhing tentacles. It was one of the Kryn's genetically engineered abominations, bred for one purpose only: to rend and kill in the most vicious ways imaginable. Louis whipped his rifle to his shoulder with a roar and opened fire. Plasma bolts stitched across the monster's carapace, burning holes in the thick, chitinous armor. But it kept coming. Louis aimed his plasma rifle at the nightmarish insectoid monstrosity, charging towards him and Mira, and squeezed the trigger. Searing bolts of energy tore into the monster's thick carapace, blasting ichor and chunks of armor in all directions. It screeched in pain as plasma fire amputated its razor-sharp limbs one by one, but impossibly, horrifically, the grievous wounds began knitting back together almost as soon as they were made, and the abomination continued its relentless advance. Louis kept firing until the magnetic coils in his rifle overheated, and the barrel glowed white-hot, but it wasn't enough. The creature lunged, faster than his eyes could track, and swatted the gun out of his hands like a child's toy. Its sheer mass bowled Louis over, and he found himself pinned to the rubble-strewn ground, the monster's serrated talons digging into his combat armor. Vicious, dripping mandibles snapped mere inches from Louis's face, and the putrid stench of decay made him gag. He knew that even a single scratch from those venomous fangs would flood his body with paralytic neurotoxins. His death would be slow and agonizing as he suffocated, unable to breathe. Louis groped desperately at his belt for his monomolecular combat knife, his fingers brushing its handle, just as a thunderous boom split the air. The creature's grotesque head exploded like an overripe melon, showering Louis in a spray of noxious ichor and twitching bits of flesh. He looked up in shock to see Mira propped up on one elbow behind the monster's corpse, clutching his dropped rifle. Her face was a mask of pain and fatigue, but she managed a grim nod before the rifle slipped from her hands and she collapsed. "Mira!" Louis shouted, scrambling to his feet and rushing to the wounded Binar's side. He gently cradled her head and checked her vitals. Her breathing was labored and shallow, her violet skin taking on an ashen pallor. The med patch on her shoulder was leaking, the coagulant gel unable to stem the flow of blood from her ravaged flesh. Louis keyed his comm with shaking hands. "Command, this is Lieutenant Lewis. I need an immediate evac. I've got a critically injured Binar." Nothing but static answered him. "Command, come in. Do you read me?" Louis repeated frantically. Still no response. The battle must have knocked out their comms. "Shit!" Louis spat. He pulled an emergency beacon from his belt and activated it, praying to whatever gods were listening that the short-range locator signal could get through the interference. He sat there holding Mira as minutes crawled by with agonizing slowness, each second an eternity. Louis watched the rise and fall of her chest grow weaker and weaker. Finally, blessedly, he heard the whine of repulsor engines. A human medevac shuttle descended through a crack in the bunker's damaged roof, spotlight stabbing through the dusty gloom. Louis gathered Mira up in his arms and carried her aboard. As the shuttle lifted off, tracer rounds and flak from Kryn AA batteries flew past the viewports. Louis stared out at the burning ruins of the Binar city below, watching division after division of Kryn troops and armored vehicles marching through the rubble-choked streets, hunting down and mercilessly executing any survivors like vermin to be exterminated. The blood-red and jet-black banners of the Kryn Empire snapped in the smoke-filled wind. Louis felt his fists clenching white-knuckled in helpless rage at the wanton slaughter. The medevac docked aboard the human flagship in orbit, and Louis helped rush Mira to the medbay. To his surprise, he was almost immediately summoned to a briefing with Admiral Harkin. The Admiral's face was etched with new lines of grief and stress. As Louis entered the briefing room, he was shocked to see Mira there waiting, looking haggard and shell-shocked but alive, her grievous wounds healed. What meager relief he felt was quickly quashed by the Admiral's next words. "Lieutenant Lewis, emissary Mira. I'll cut right to it," Harkin said heavily. "A small flotilla of Binar ships managed to escape the Kryn blockade. High Chancellor Zelos was aboard one of them, along with the last known repository of Binar history, culture, and genetic material." Louis's heart leapt at this small shred of hope amidst the destruction, but the Admiral continued grimly. "The fleet is regrouping at a classified rally point. Chancellor Zelos has personally requested your presence there. According to Zelos, He has information about a critical weakness in Kryn physiology and technology, something we might be able to exploit. Harkin fixed Lewis and Mira with a stare that could melt neutronium. I don't think I need to spell out how important this is. That data could mean the difference between our two races surviving this war and being consigned to the galactic scrap heap of extinct species. You're to escort Emissary Mira to the rendezvous ASAP and meet with Zelos. Find out what he knows and get that intel back to us. The fate of humanity and the Binars is riding on this. Understood? Louis snapped to attention and saluted. Sir, yes, sir, we won't fail. But as he spoke the words, he wondered if it was a promise he could keep, with the Kryn war machine rampaging unchecked across the stars. Louis and Mira strapped themselves into the crash seats of the stealth corvette. The pilot, Ensign Rains, fired up the sleek black ship's fusion engines. The vessel slipped out of the flagship's hangar on whisper-quiet gravitic thrusters, angling for the twisting indigo clouds of the Maelstrom Nebula looming ahead. Lewis's jaw was tight as he called up the grim after-action reports from the fall of Xyloth. The holoscreen painted a picture of utter devastation, smoking craters where cities once stood, continents blanketed in ash and blood. The casualty figures were staggering. Over 2/3 of the human forces had fallen to the Kryn onslaught. It hit Lewis like a gut punch, realizing that so many friends and comrades were just gone, and that he was one of the most senior officers remaining. The burden of that knowledge, of the lives now depending on his leadership, weighed on him like a yoke of neutronium across his shoulders. Mira seemed to sense his inner turmoil. She reached over and laid a slender hand on his armored forearm. Your soldiers fought with valor and honor, she said softly. We will remember their courage and sacrifice, always. Louis swallowed hard and managed a nod of gratitude. Then his eyes snapped to the sensor board as it pinged with urgent contacts. A squadron of Kryn warships had dogged them into the nebula, their hulking shadows appearing in the swirling gas clouds. Shit, they followed us, Rains snarled. He wrenched the control yoke, sending the corvette into a stomach-churning evasive pattern. A salvo of crackling quantum torpedoes scorched past, near misses that rattled the ship's frame. Louis lunged for the weapons console, fingers flying over the controls. Particle cannons online, rerouting power from shields. He swung the corvette's bow around, lining up the shot. The Kryn ships were large and heavily armored, built to outlast and outgun, but the nimble human vessel danced circles around them, zipping through the nebula's roiling plasma storms that fouled the Kryn's targeting. Louis' finger stabbed the firing stud. Searing lances of blue-white energy slammed into the lead Kryn frigate. The particle beams tore through its shields like tissue paper, burning clean through the hull and out the other side. The frigate exploded in a massive conflagration, a miniature supernova flashing in the nebula's depths. But the rest of the Kryn ships bore down on them, spitting death. Rains sent the corvette into a screeching dive, so close to a swirling vortex of stellar gases that the hull temperature spiked into the red. Warning klaxons blared, the ship groaning under the stresses. "Hold on to your nuts, we're going in," Rains hollered. He whipped the ship into the heart of the maelstrom, a storm of electromagnetic fury that battered their shields and set the instruments haywire. The Kryn squadron arrogantly plunged in after them, their heavier ships struggling against the gravitational riptides. Louis watched in awe as the vortex's shear forces took hold of the Kryn vessels and tore them to shreds. Armor plates peeled away, hulls crumpled like foil, reactors breached and ruptured. One by one the alien ships shattered into glittering debris, vanishing into the nebula's immortal grip. Rains whooped in triumph as he threaded the corvette through the final plasma streamers and back into open space. The ship was shuddering and sparking but still flying, the Binar fleet's rallying point growing in the forward viewports. "Damn fine flying, Ensign," Louis said, clapping the young pilot on the shoulder. Rains just grinned, still riding the adrenaline high. As the corvette approached the tattered collection of Binar ships clustered around the massive dreadnought at their center, a priority hail lit up the comms board. Louis hit the accept key, and the screen filled with Chancellor Zelos's grizzled features. The elderly Bynarr looked like he'd aged a decade since Louis last saw him. "Commander Lewis, Emissary Mira, I am relieved you survived," Zelos said. His voice was heavy with weariness and sorrow, but still unbowed. "I know you've been through hell, but I have urgent news. Our spies have uncovered the secret to the Kryn's overwhelming victories. A relic AI they call the Oracle. It's the heart of their military machine, a strategic mastermind coordinating their every move." Louis clenched a fist. The countless dead of Zeloth cried out for vengeance in his mind. "Then we destroy this Oracle, rip out the heart and watch the body wither." Zelos nodded. "Indeed, but it won't be easy. The Oracle is housed in the Kryn's most impenetrable stronghold, a place they believe untouchable. A frontal assault would be suicide. But—" The Chancellor steepled his fingers. "The Kryn are arrogant, overconfident in their superiority. They would never expect us to dare infiltrate their sanctum. A single team, small and elite, we might just have a chance." Zelos fixed Louis with a pleading stare. "Commander, I have no right to ask more of you. But there is no one else. You're the best of us, the only one who might pull this off. With Mira as your guide to the Kryn's secrets, you may be our last hope." Louis looked to Mira. In her eyes he saw the same steely determination that had kept her species from the brink of annihilation thus far. The same need to take the fight to the enemy, to make them bleed for every inch of ground, every life extinguished. He knew there was only one answer he could give. Louis squared his shoulders and faced Zelos. "I'm in. We'll take this Oracle offline or die trying. This ends now one way or another." Louis felt a spark of hope rekindle in his chest as he assembled his hand-picked team in the armory. Sergeant Hawkins, a grizzled veteran sharpshooter who'd been with Louis since the early days on Xyloth. Corporal Riggs, a brash demolitions expert with a flair for making things go boom. And Specialist Chen, an unflappable tech wizard able to hack any alien system. As they geared up with the best stealth tech and weapons available, Mira entered, a look of fierce determination on her violet features. "I'm coming with you," she said, her tone brooking no argument. "My knowledge of Kryn facilities will be essential." Louis nodded grimly. He knew there was no talking her out of it, and her intel would be invaluable. They boarded a captured Kryn shuttle, Mira taking the co-pilot's seat as Chen settled in at the engineering station. "All right, people, listen up," Louis said over the team comm. "This is a stealth insertion. We get in, we find this Oracle, and we blow it straight to hell. No heroics, no unnecessary risks. We do this smart and we all come home. Hooah?" "Hooah!" the team chorused back. Mira deftly guided the shuttle through Kryn-held space, the sleek craft sliding past sensor nets and patrol routes. The Oracle facility soon came into view, a heavily fortified base hewn into a remote moon. "Transmitting fake IFF codes," Mira reported, fingers dancing over the console. "With any luck, their systems won't know the difference." Luck, however, was in short supply. As they made their final approach, alarms suddenly blared across the base. Plasma cannons swiveled and opened fire, lances of energy strafing across the shuttle's shields. "Damn it, we're blown," Riggs shouted from the back. "Kryn fighters launching inbound hot." "Chen, keep those shields up," Louis ordered, gripping his restraints as the shuttle bucked and juked. "Hawkins, prep the torpedo. Let's give 'em a taste of their own medicine." Chen's fingers flew across the engineering board, rerouting power and reinforcing the rapidly failing shields. Hawkins lined up a shot on the main hangar doors, a cold sniper's focus in his eyes. "Firing torpedo, now!" The lone warhead streaked from the shuttle's launch tube, impacting dead center on the atmospheric containment field. A massive explosion ripped through the hangar, igniting fuel and ordnance. The Kryn fighters, caught inside, were sucked out into the void as the field failed catastrophically. "Holy shit, it worked," Riggs crowed. "You magnificent bastard, Hawkins." The shuttle slipped through the blasted hangar doors, setting down amid the wreckage and debris. Louis was first out, plasma rifle up and scanning. The others fanned out behind him, moving with practiced precision. Scattered Kryn troops, disoriented by the blast, stumbled through the smoke. The team cut them down with ruthless efficiency, plasma bolts and particle beams stitching through black armor. Mira took point, leading them into the warren of corridors, snaking deeper into the base. They blasted through security checkpoints and auto turrets, the staccato bark of weapons fire echoing through the halls. The Oracle chamber was close now. Louis could feel it. Just a little further. And then a titanic boom shook the entire base to its foundations. The team exchanged worried glances. "What the hell was that?" Riggs muttered. "Sounded like—" A thunderous roar cut him off, drawing closer by the second. Around the corner stomped a towering reptilian form, clad in elaborate power armor, a crackling plasma glaive gripped in each taloned fist. Mira paled, fear flashing across her face. "Kryn Warmaster," she whispered. "They're the elite of the elite, bred for combat and fanatically loyal to the Oracle. I've seen one of them slaughter dozens of our best warriors single-handedly." The Warmaster leveled a glaive at Louis, bearing rows of gleaming fangs. "Pathetic humans," it snarled in broken English. "You dare defy the Oracle's will? I shall flay the flesh from your bones." With a blood-curdling roar, the hulking alien charged, moving with terrifying speed and grace. The team opened fire, but the creature's armor shrugged off their plasma bolts like so much rain. It swung the glaives in a blinding flurry, superheated blades slicing through the team's cover like a hot knife through butter. Hawkins was first to fall, a flashing glaive bisecting his torso before he could even scream. Riggs tried to circle around, lining up his particle beam rifle, but the Warmaster hurled a glaive with pinpoint accuracy. It impaled Riggs, pinning him to the wall, his agonized howls echoing off the cold metal. Chen lobbed a plasma grenade, the brilliant detonation flaring across the Warmaster's armor, but it barely slowed the creature's relentless advance. It fell on Chen like an avalanche, the sickening crunch of bones and armor mingling with Chen's gurgling cry. Louis and Mira fell back, the Warmaster's onslaught driving them closer and closer to a gaping conduit pulsing with raw plasma. Louis knew they had no chance of defeating this monstrosity head-on. He met Mira's terrified gaze, an unspoken understanding passing between them. "Mira, run," Louis bellowed. "Get to the Oracle." With no other choice, he squared his shoulders and charged, firing his rifle one-handed in a futile gesture of defiance. The Warmaster's backhand caught him like a freight train, sending him crashing to the deck in a crumpled heap. But as Louis struggled to rise on broken limbs, he saw the Warmaster's final step landed directly on the plasma conduit's cover, the same cover weakened by Chen's grenade and Louis's own hail of fire. With a tortured metallic shriek, the cover gave way. The Warmaster howled in thwarted rage as it plummeted into the crackling blue abyss, the stench of charred flesh billowing up. Louis staggered upright, scooping up Riggs's fallen rifle in trembling hands. He limped down the corridor, following the fading sound of Mira's footsteps. Every breath seared his lungs, every step sent daggers of agony through his battered frame. But still, he pushed on. At last, he reached the Oracle chamber. Mira knelt at the base of the malevolent crimson core, tears cutting through the grime on her face as she accessed the ancient alien systems. Louis shambled to her side, fighting to keep Riggs's rifle leveled at that pulsing heart of evil. "Can you shut it down?" he asked hoarsely. Mira shook her head, despair in her eyes. "Not from here. The Oracle's consciousness is already uploading to an off-site backup. If we don't stop that process—" She trailed off, but the implication was clear. The war would begin anew, the Kryn rising from the ashes to burn across the stars once more. Louis snarled through bloody teeth, finger tightening on the trigger. "Like hell it will." He looked deep into the Oracle's glowing core, seeing visions of slaughter and conquest, an implacable machine intellect bent on unending expansion. He thought of all they'd lost, friends and comrades, his home, Mira's entire species. No more. "This ends now," Louis whispered, and opened fire, the rifle's barrel blazing like the heart of a newborn star. The oracle's core shattered, exotic matter and bizarre energies spilling out to consume the room in a maelstrom of light and fury. Louis never felt the flames that consumed him, the detonation that vaporized man and machine alike. All he knew in that last instant was that it was done. The lights were going out across the galaxy, and he could rest now, his duty discharged to the utmost. Peace at last. Louis felt his finger tighten on the rifle's trigger, his heart hammering in his chest. The oracle's nexus pulsed before him, a malevolent heart of circuitry and alien geometries. Just as he began to squeeze, a voice slithered into his mind, insidious and cruel. "Foolish human," it purred, the oracle's tone dripping with contempt. "You think destroying this nexus will stop the Kryn? We are legion. For every world you save, we will conquer a dozen more." Louis hesitated, a cold dread unfurling in his gut. "And now, thanks to you, we know the location of Earth," the oracle continued, its voice a dark chuckle. "Oh yes, we've gleaned the coordinates from your feeble minds. Even now our fleets are preparing to annihilate your pathetic homeworld. The Kryn will feast on humanity's ashes." A snarl tore from Louis's throat and he pulled the trigger. The particle beam leapt from the rifle, a lance of brilliant energy that pierced the oracle's heart. The nexus exploded, sparks and flames engulfing the chamber. The oracle's laughter echoed in Louis's mind, fading into static as the nexus crumbled. Mira grabbed Louis's arm, her eyes wide. "We need to go now." The entire base shuddered, the floor bucking beneath their feet. The self-destruct, Louis realized. The oracle's fail-safe. He turned and sprinted for the door, Mira close behind. They raced through the disintegrating corridors, dodging falling debris and gouts of plasma fire that burst from ruptured conduits. The hangar was chaos. Kryn soldiers scrambling for ships as the roof collapsed in sheets of twisted metal. Louis and Mira leaped aboard their waiting shuttle, Mira frantically stabbing at the controls. The shuttle surged forward, narrowly avoiding a plummeting girder. It shot out of the hangar and into the starry void, the moon base exploding behind them in a blinding flash that rocked the tiny craft. Mira slumped back in the pilot's seat, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Louis stared out the viewport at the expanding field of debris that had once been the oracle's sanctum. "It's over," Mira whispered. "We did it." Louis shook his head grimly. "It's not over, not by a long shot." He reached forward and opened a comm channel to the ragtag fleet waiting anxiously in orbit. "Admiral Harkin, this is Lieutenant Louis. The Oracle has been destroyed, but we have a problem. The Kryn know Earth's location. They're coming." There was a heavy pause, the comm link crackling with static. Then Harkin's voice, rough with emotion but firm with resolve. "Understood, Lieutenant. We'll begin evacuations immediately and fortify Earth's defenses. Humanity will not go down without a fight." As the shuttle docked with the flagship, Louis felt a weight settle on his shoulders, heavy as a mountain. The war had taken a desperate turn, but he knew with unshakable certainty that he would fight to his last breath to defend his home, to defend Earth. The evacuation was a frenzied blur of activity. Every available ship, human and Binar alike, working around the clock to ferry civilians to the relative safety of Earth. Engineers and scientists swarmed over the planet's defenses, reinforcing shields and installing new weapon systems reverse-engineered from captured Kryn tech. Admiral Harkin summoned Louis to his quarters, the older man's face lined with fatigue and worry. "I'm placing you in command of a new unit, Lieutenant," he said. "We're calling them the Void Hunters, a joint human-Binar task force. You'll be training them in asymmetric warfare, hit-and-run tactics. We can't match the Kryn fleet head-on, but we can bloody their noses, make them pay for every inch of space." Louis nodded, his jaw set. "I understand, sir. We'll make them regret ever setting their sights on Earth." Mira was there too, standing proud in the uniform of a Binar commander. "I've been assigned as your liaison," she said, her voice steady despite the fear that lurked in her eyes. "We're in this together, Louis. To the end." Over the next weeks, Louis threw himself into his new role with the same focus and intensity he'd shown on the battlefield. He drilled his Void Hunters mercilessly, honing them into a lethal fighting force. They became ghosts, striking the Kryn from the shadows and fading away before the enemy could mount a response. But it wasn't enough. The Kryn armada arrived, a swarm of nightmarish ships that filled the skies, blotting out the sun. Lewis, leading a desperate defense from the cockpit of his battered fighter, could only watch in helpless rage as the Kryn bombardment reduced Earth's cities to rubble. The battle raged for days, the human and Bynarr forces fighting with a desperate, bloody-minded courage. But the Kryn were relentless, their weapons and armor superior in every way. One by one, Earth's defenses crumbled, the planet's surface transformed into a hellscape of fire and ruin. Millions died, their screams echoing across the comm channels, as the Kryn's monstrous troops descended on the ravaged cities like a plague. Only the constant sacrifice of Lewis's pilots and soldiers bought enough time for the evacuation ships to slip away, carrying the tattered remnants of humanity and the Bynarr to the stars. In the final hours, Louis and Mira fought side by side in the shattered ruins of the last human stronghold. The sky burned orange with the light of 1,000 fires, the air choked with ash and the stench of death. Kryn warriors swarmed over the rubble, their howls of bloodlust mingling with the bark of Louis's rifle and the sizzle of Mira's plasma blades. They were the last two left, a human and a Bynarr defiant to the end. As the final Kryn warship descended on their position, its weapons glowing with the promise of annihilation, Louis reached out and took Mira's hand in his, a final gesture of camaraderie, of the bond they'd forged in the crucible of war. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.